All right, want to get started? Did you have a?
There's enough, but they could.
All right, mic's on anyways, hopefully pick it up. A bit of feedback here. Welcome everybody to this planning board meeting, Wednesday, January 15th, 2020. First item on our agenda is a roll call. Tonight we have Lisa Buck, we've got Jen McIntosh, myself, Phil Ruck, we've got Jeremy Chubbuck, we've got John Beckett, and we have Michael Costello down at the end. Next up is acceptance of the agenda. Can I get a motion? So moved. Have a second?
Seconded.
Very good. Any discussion on that? Additions, edits? I do have one item I thought of recently. I would like to add to the discussion topic about meeting timing.
Okay.
So you can just add that, just a brief discussion. You get your thoughts. All right, if there's no other comments, additions, all those in favor of the agenda as just modified. Next up is approval of the minutes of the December 18th, 2019 meeting. Can I get a motion? Very good. Have a second?
Second.
Any edits? Our chief editor is not here tonight. Do we expect any other people, or is this who we have this evening? Just want to make sure.
I don't remember hearing that Dave couldn't make it, or Krista.
We have a quorum anyway, so
Yeah.
We have to.
would we designate
Yeah.
Michael? Very good. All right, I looked at them briefly. The only thing, and I could be mistaken, but I could have sworn that it just is a matter of course, because in your minutes, when we talked about the approval of the minutes last time, that there was no request and no second, which I was surprised, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I ran through it several times to make sure I hadn't missed it, but it does look like in the discussion of the actual revisions, the motion got lost, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can do that at a.
That's why I was wondering, so procedurally, if we didn't, just so we have something on the record, do we need to revisit that tonight to square that up, or?
I think we can either do it tonight or at the next meeting, whichever is more comfortable. But I would say that, yes.
We're missing a few members that were here, so why don't we push that off? If you could add that, just.
For next month?
Yeah, procedural. So that
yeah, I think there was a comment and a question mixed in there, and it kind of jumbled up the process of it, and it just kind of got skipped over.
Yeah, I'm new here.
It's your first time.
All right. Any other edits, comments? I guess hearing none, all those in favor of these minutes as presented. You guys,
I wasn't there.
You can't, we don't have a quorum then, right? 4? Yeah, we need 5, right?
Yeah. We can wait till next.
We'll table that one too.
We can do all the minutes
Think
next
of that,
week.
'cause you two weren't here. There we go. Push that one off till next meeting. Next up, old business. We have a continuation of a public hearing for a major site plan review application by Regional School Unit number 26 for proposed expansions to the Orono Middle School, High School, and Asa C. Adams Elementary School located at 6 Goodridge Drive, tax map 27-0, lot 12, in the medium density residential district. I do understand from Kyle that the applicant is not here, but you will be giving an update in their place.
Yes. So last meeting, when the project was first introduced, one of the big areas of discussion was the detention pond located between the two schools, and that its placement was in the same area that there was sort of a vegetated outdoor learning area that the tree board has been working on for many years, and that the detention pond would impact that. So the outcome of last meeting was that the RSU, some town staff, and the tree board were going to meet and discuss some possible alternatives. That happened last week. The applicant's engineer brought some potential ideas. The town also brought to the applicant's attention that getting an easement would be possible The council actually passed an order Monday night saying that they would be okay with the town manager issuing an MOU or an easement to use town land on either side of the RSU property for any sort of stormwater management, as long as it didn't impact any kind of town assets or any other active areas. So with that information, the applicant has brought back a new proposal. We're still reviewing that at the staff level just to make sure everything's okay. And once they get the okay that that area is okay to look at for the pond, then they're going to start finalizing plans and hope to come back in February for continue the review process.
Very good. I'm just trying to recall, other issues on the table other than the pond?
So there were a few other questions, some of which also related to stormwater management that they have mentioned that they're in the process of gathering information for and submitting responses for. So that should also be answered by the next meeting.
Very good.
I think they were just looking to submit it all at one time.
Has DEP finished its review?
No, they're still in the process. DEP actually gave RSU some comments that kind of adjusted things even outside of our discussion of the detention pond. I'm sure they'll speak to this at the next meeting, but DEP, I think, was now requiring them to have a little more of a stormwater management plan and a scale for their detention pond, just to control for different levels of water. But yeah, so that process is still ongoing.
Very good. So procedurally, we would just leave the public hearing open. I don't think I need a motion, anything like that, or do we have to?
No, I think we can just leave it open.
And we anticipate that they'll be back in February if all goes well?
Yes, that's the goal as of now.
Okay.
So if not, it would be something similar to this where we would just give an update probably and push it back again.
Very good. All right, moving on, and actually moving back. Let the record show that Krista Schwitzer just arrived. She was at that meeting the last time. So we didn't have a quorum. Judd and Lisa were not here. So we were going to table that, and then you walked in the door. So I think we can vote on that. So the question, if we're going to go back to the minutes that were in the packet, do you have any edits on those?
Minutes, yeah, let's see. Okay, my only comment is on the third page. And it's more a stylistic comment. On the third page, the paragraph near the top, starting Mr. Dexler. I'll start in with Mandy Holloway. Mandy Holloway, Alder, and Public Works Director Bob York, it says came up with a memo, which sounds like we fudged something.
Understood.
So how about saying sent a memo?
Yep,
And that's the only comment.
thank you.
Thank you, Krista.
Holloway, Oliver, because it's from Oliver.
It actually is OLB. Well, very good. So I'm gonna, so we had a motion. I'm gonna start all over again. Can I have a motion
Make a motion, we accept the minutes
as amended?
as amended.
Very good. Can I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Any more comments? All those in favor of the amended minutes? Good. Don't have to do that next time. Next up on the agenda is new business. Tonight we have a contract zone amendment request by Sons of Carpentry LLC to amend an existing contract zone of 117 through 121 Mill Street to allow for additional residential dwelling unit for an additional residential dwelling unit on the second floor of the structure. Can I have the applicant step up to the mic and tell us what you propose, please?
Thing working? You guys hear me? No? Yeah?
Yep, it's good.
Yeah, we purchased the building in 2017, immediately went in, met with Bill, did some improvements, renovated the first floor and the third floor, started on the second floor, seeked potential tenants in that office space for the last almost 3 years now, to the point of almost giving away a year of free rent to kind of get somebody in there. Hasn't happened, so we went to Bill and kind of worked out a floor plan that would work to make an additional 2-bedroom apartment on one side of the building. And that's kind of where we're at now. We have been reluctant to rent the space, so it's been tough. We have other residential units that we know that does much better. It's easier to rent, and having a second floor in that building that's been vacant and putting as much money as we have in the building is the only option for us at this point. So we came to Kyle with a plan and Bill, and we moved on to the committee. That's where we're at now. If you have any questions, go for it.
Very good. I'm going to ask Kyle for a summary that he provided, and once he gets that, if you wouldn't mind staying up there, and then we can throw some questions at you if we have them. So Kyle, you did prepare a memo for the board. Can you go over that, please?
Sure. So this property has been, there's been a contract zone for it since 1995. Its surrounding area is all medium density residential. So obviously, in our today's medium density residential, a structure like that wouldn't exist in today's MDR. But through the contract zone, that lot was turned into a high density residential lot in 1995. And it was to be used for banks, offices, medical offices, and a single dwelling unit on the third floor. In 2010, the owner at the time came before the council and the board with a similar proposal to have an additional dwelling unit on the second floor because they were also struggling to fill that second floor office space. I think at the time, the reasoning for not pursuing that was that the student housing was more of an issue in town. We didn't have a rental registration at the time. There weren't some of the larger apartment complexes that exist now that house a lot of students. There were more sort of in residential neighborhoods that cause potential nuisances. But so at the time in 2010, 2011, that contract request did not go through. However, it did allow for a few additional small scale commercial uses to go in on the first 2 floors that met certain conditions of the ordinance. But overall, the general use of the building stayed, commercial on the first 2 floors and residential on the third floor. So the current applicant wishes to do something similar with a single dwelling unit on the second floor, which would essentially create a 2-family residential, structure here, which 2-family structures are allowed by permit in the HDR. 2-family structures are also allowed in the MDR. So even within the surrounding area, a 2-family in the medium density residential district requires site plan, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that a 2-family couldn't also exist in that sort of zoning district. But as with any sort of zoning change or contract zone request, we try to relate the request to the goals of the comprehensive plan to make sure that it makes sense with the town's long-term vision. There are a couple of factors mentioned in the comprehensive plan that kind of speak to this idea. One is housing in and near downtown, encouraging mixed uses, which this is, the definition of mixed use with commercial on the first floor and then residential on the other floors. So encourage mixed uses, including residences in and adjacent to downtown, and improve the quality of housing in and around downtown. Providing more housing opportunities, whether owner occupied or rental occupied, is a goal providing that housing near our existing services, our buses and the downtown businesses and things like that. All of that is very much a goal of the comprehensive plan. And also allowing the Orono downtown to grow in a compact, walkable manner, building on its village architecture and character. I mean, this isn't a structural addition to allow for this dwelling unit. It's in an existing structure that's currently not being used. As the applicant pointed out. So you're not adding any building footprint. You're more just using a space that currently isn't being used to serve a need that the town has identified in the comp plan. It appears that one of the main issues in 2010, as I said, was the idea of student housing and finding that balance of introducing some student and just rentals in general into smaller residential neighborhoods. The image I provided in the memo is kind of a screenshot of those few blocks, the block where this proposed project is taking place with the immediate surrounding blocks. All those colored parcels are parcels that took part in our rental registration previous year. So you can see there's a pretty healthy mix of owner-occupied lots and rental lots there. And I'd say that one of the other few remaining issues to discuss with this would be the idea of parking and traffic. And our parking requirement for a residential unit like this would actually be less than the required parking for office space of that amount. And there is a parking lot towards the rear of the building that would be able to serve having that additional dwelling unit there. Other than that, it's a legally non-conforming lot, and so long as it's legally non-conforming and you're not making any structural additions to the building, you can expand a residential use within that building. So.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, we have heard from the applicant and the summary from Are there questions for the applicant or Kyle? Any questions? Very good. I'm going to open the public hearing and invite those of you that came this evening to step up to the mic and state your concerns or support.
Good evening. Good evening, all right. I'm Ray Thomas. I live at 104 Mill Street, directly across from 117 and 121. I lived there for 30 years. And prior to that, it was my grandparents' house, so I spent a lot of time in that neighborhood. There seems to be deja vu all over the apartment on the second floor. I'm close to the landlord putting residents back on the second floor. The neighborhood, we went through this back in 2010 when Mr. Kennedy went there. There were a number of problems associated. They used to call that building a shine box. I don't know where the name came from, but that's what it's called. To me, it's always been known. I've seen things from almost being hit from golf balls being hit off the roof, tents on the roof, parties on the roof, TVs coming out of the second floor and smashing in the middle of the street, along with beer bottles, and dirty dishes that students didn't want to wash. You mix Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night with alcoholic adult beverages and students. That's where the problem is. I do want to applaud the landowners, but the students that are in there this year, zero problems. They've been very good, very.
Can I answer a question? So
Wait just a sec. All right. just let him finish, and then we need you on the record, so I don't probably have to ask you to get up again.
Yeah, the students that have been there this school year have been great. The ones that were there the year before were terrible, to say the least. It was a day, every day pick up trash, beer bottles, and I even watched them throwing bottles, because that building is 3 stories high, and the building next to it is only 1 story house. They were throwing water bottles full of water, trying to get them in the chimney of the house next door. But, yeah, the previous year was quite a different story. This year's been great. And if the town decides to do something, I hope the landlord keep them under control like they have this year.
Very good.
Yeah,
Thank you. If you could step up to the mic, please.
to speak to both of those concerns, we got a management company that we hired that we were unfamiliar with. And we knew about the issue, and we got them out as best as we could. It's very difficult through the school year in the wintertime, but we did get them out. My property manager that does property management for me down south, he rents that space downstairs now, so he's on site. So I don't think you're gonna have any more issues. I really hope you don't. The roof issue is gonna go away. With Bill's help and fire, I've already met them out there. We've already started to build a new fire escape. So we'll seal off that access. They will no longer have access to the roof. I never liked that from day one. And that's our next plan. We've done a lot of work inside. I'm sure you're aware, you've probably seen us over there, but, and that's our plan. We want to put money into it, but it also has to kind of help us, make things work out in the end. So just to speak to those two concerns, because I know the roof thing definitely concerned. I saw one of the police reports in the past that made me nervous. So we're working on that. And in fact, the fire escape is pretty much built. And it's a matter of just how this thing goes, whether or not we move forward. So I appreciate it, and yeah, I'll definitely work on it.
I have a follow-up question. So you're aware of the ordinances we have? As Kyle mentioned, as part of our comprehensive plan was to lock down this, because this has been an ongoing problem. So there's problem properties, and there's a procedure for reporting to the town so that should not happen.
I can tell you, this school year, I've made 0 calls to the police. The previous year, I call up because they recognized my phone number or address.
Yeah.
And the dispatcher would say, "You calling about 117?"
Yeah.
I say, "Yes, ma'am."
Yeah. I'm aware of one police report that was sent to us.
Right.
That was the only major issue we had, and then after that issue, there was some damage done to the building, we got them out there.
Because we spent 2.5 years almost developing the comprehensive plan, trying to deal with all these specific issues.
Yeah.
And we tried to put teeth in that as best of our ability.
Right.
As the planning committee, the planning board was involved with that. But it's a serious issue. So if we have neighbors, that's how this is supposed to work. Kyle mentioned trying to get a mix of residential and the downtown area, and we tried to enact ordinances or put procedures in place to deal with that, and we take that seriously. So I keep calling if there's an issue. That's what it was. Good.
No, I want to know. I mean, most of my units I have we take care of them really well. Take pride in a lot of our stuff, and I don't want any neighbor to ever have an issue. And I don't want to have any. My dad was probably 38 years. I don't want to. I know what it's like to deal with that stuff. I don't want to deal with it. And the girls that are in there now, and I know everyone that's in there now likes being in there. We've had no issues. But I know what you're talking about. I know the history of that building just from the committee meetings I've been in, so I understand. But we're lucky to see them. So again.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other comments?
I live at 64 Mill Street, just off the way. My questions are for the landowner. How many bedrooms is this new unit going to have?
2 bedrooms.
Yeah, I apologize. Would you mind? Yeah, right. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, usually this is on the record, so we need to record that, and usually it's not going to pick up side comments. So All right. So we'll let you stand side by side and you can nail them as they come along.
So the plan right now is two-bedroom unit on one side. The tenant that manages the property, he's actually going to take part of the second floor. So we're going to only have two-bedroom on one side of that building. In fact, working with Kyle, I know there's nothing on the books right now, but we're probably going to plan to just Airbnb that. So it'll be even less impact than, full-time. No. Hopefully it's not a lot.
Very good. Thank you. Other comments?
So we did get one emailed comment as well that I can read on after.
Questions that I'll ask. Is the fire, this has been approved by the fire department?
So that wouldn't be part of the contract zone process.
Has this been reviewed by the fire department?
Yes, and it will continue to be before issuing the permit to allow the dwelling unit. So with any contract zone and project that needs a contract zone, the contract zone and the actual permitting of the use are separate things. So the contract zone really allows for the potential of the thing to exist. The permit would be for that dwelling unit would actually be done through the code enforcement office. And during that process, before any permit was issued, is when there would be any kind of final input and decisions made with, fire department or any additional land use kind of concerns. But there has been discussion between the applicant and various town staff as to what needs to be done in regards to that.
So the configuration, what I understand, will be 2 apartments and how many commercial spaces?
So the way the contract is written is that there would be the way it's currently written is that there's a single dwelling unit, single apartment on the 3rd floor, and this would add a single apartment dwelling unit on the 2nd floor.
Are there commercial spaces in the building now?
Yes,
How many are
so it doesn't really define, it just says the 1st and 2nd floors are open to commercial spaces.
Then what would be the parking requirements for this building for?
So residential units require 3 parking spaces, and our office space requires 1 parking space for every few hundred square feet.
So how many parking spaces does the lot have?
I think it's somewhere in the 12 range, I think, roughly.
Well,
Which is about what would be, depending on the exact layout, that's,
and the applicant said that apartment on the 3rd floor has 4 bedrooms.
yes, correct.
You know that the laws on 3 unrelated to more than 3.
So this is actually,
That's correct.
so this lot is contract zoned as a high density residential lot,
Right.
in which case multifamily buildings are allowed in the high density residential. And in any zone where multifamily structures are allowed, you're actually allowed to have 5 unrelated people. In districts where there aren't multifamily structures allowed, you're only allowed to have 3 unrelated people. So in the medium density residential, the surrounding area, you would only be allowed to have 3 unrelated people in a unit. But in the high density residential, in the village commercial, in the C2, in those zoning districts, you're allowed to have 5 unrelated people.
I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was.
No.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Other questions? I was curious on the total parking number as well, just thinking about all the units, but correct me. So you said it shouldn't be a problem because there's parking out back, but they can also park in the street, correct?
Well, the parking is
Seasonally.
It's required off-street parking,
I was just
so they
wondering.
would need the proper number of spaces in the off-street parking area. I don't think the parking back there is defined exactly every inch, but if you were to kind of map out all of the lines, then it would meet the required parking. But again, that's not really, the contract zone isn't looking at it from a site plan
Mhm.
perspective. So that's not really an area that's focused on through this. If the parking requirement wasn't met, the applicant wouldn't be able to get the permit through the code office to have the dwelling unit.
Okay.
But if this was a project that required site plan review, then we would be doing the contract and site plan review simultaneously, and we would be looking at the parking through the site plan review process.
I just want to make sure this board
Yeah.
has enough information
Correct,
to make a recommendation. So based on what you've told me,
Yes.
it appears that the parking is sufficient,
Yes,
and we're not really considering that because this is not a site plan review.
correct.
Does everybody understand that? That's important for our discussion. Further questions? I see Dave stepping up to the mic.
Good evening, folks. My name is Dave Milan. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development for the town of Orono. And I don't normally talk on individual applications, but in this one I'm going to. Is that I am here to support the applicant and to give a little bit of the economic background and the future for that area. As you've heard, that in 2009 was the latest time that this was reviewed. There was the concern, and many of you know, during that time period, it was sort of the highlight of the Animal House mentality going on at the time. We have created a lot of ordinances to deal with disorderly properties. Frankly, a year ago, that type of activity may have been able to go on, but in 2019, the town council adopted as had come before the planning board an ordinance for disorderly properties. And so the police department now has the teeth, as was requested in the comprehensive plan, to be able to deal with those types of properties. The concern was, again, because of the activity and the behavior that was occurring with the tenants there, people have understandable concerns. It's sort of that's what it was before. The concern is it going to have to come that way again? So we feel that in our office, we feel that that this applicant has done everything we've asked him to do. We talked a little bit about the fire department and the zoning or the rules concerning that. He mentioned to you that the access to the roof is being eliminated. That was a direct result of our life safety inspector and former fire chief of Rob Siglos has said that thing shouldn't be there. The applicant agreed and said, I don't like it there either. How can I meet the life safety requirements and get rid of that? And so he has taken the advice of the life safety inspector, has worked towards creating that. So we're confident that when the time comes that he will meet that requirement. The previous owner had come here 10 years ago because he was having a hard time meeting the requirements of the original contract zone, meaning that he was unable to rent it out as a commercial use. Second floor commercial uses are much more difficult to rent out than first floor facilities. I have been, one of the reasons why I wanted to speak tonight is that I've been working with the applicant for the last year, trying to find a tenant for him he was, as he alluded to, was offering some pretty lucrative opportunities to be able to rent it. Frankly, it's the lowest rent I've ever heard of here or anywhere else for that type of space, and with zero interest. So it's been very, very difficult for him to do that. I think that the property owner is doing everything that they can to abide by the wishes of the council in the form of a contract zone, while still, trying to rent that property, and just finding it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to do that. So as a result of that, we looked at, if he were coming in asking for a multifamily, meaning 3 units, we would probably be having a different conversation today. But we feel that a 2-unit, 2 dwellings in that building is no different than every other, buildings in the area. And frankly, if you're looking at rental properties, residential rental properties in that area, if you go onto our map, you can highlight all of the rental registrations, the rental registrations in that area. There are, 2 to 1, there are more rental properties in that whole neighborhood than non-rental properties. So it's rental properties are happening in that neighborhood already, and not seeing the negative consequences. So I understand the concerns of neighbors of what's happened in the past, but I would say he's a new owner. If he were to repeat the practices of the previous owners, we have ordinances in places now that we would be having very quick conversations. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. You just reinforced what our goal was in that comp plan.
Correct. Thank you.
To make this work, to provide residential opportunities, but have the teeth that it gets out of hand. So, other questions, applicant? All right, last call on public hearing.
We have the one
Yes,
email
can I read that in the
comment.
record?
What was that?
Want me to read that in the record, or are you gonna?
Sure.
All right, this is dated Tuesday, January 14th from Jean Levine. This was to Kyle at the town office. Dear Planning Committee members, my spouse and I have lived at 107 Mill Street, the adjacent property to the proposed project, since 1995. I spoke in support of the contract zone for 117 and 121 Mill Street at the first public hearing in 1996 or 1997. I, along with my neighbors, were supportive of the proposal for 3rd floor being an apartment and the first 2 floors for certain types of businesses. Even at that first hearing, it was clear that none of the neighbors were supportive of the 2nd floor being an apartment. In 2011, the owner came back to the planning board and requested that the contract zone be amended to allow the 2nd floor to become an apartment. The neighbors again did not support the approval of a 2nd floor apartment. The applicant then deleted the 2nd apartment as an allowable use before it went to the town council. All the abutting properties are single dwelling residences. It is a generally quiet area. The reason I am not in favor of the 2nd floor being an apartment is that the businesses who have rented have always been good neighbors. Our quality of life decreases when the 3rd floor apartment is full. The parking lot generates noise late at night, and when the university is in session, often, not quite sure grammar-wise, often it is full. I'm not sure what that means. The combination of 2/3 of the building for businesses and 1/3 for an apartment is the right mix for the optimum use of the available resources and to be most similar in use to the property abutters. It is unfortunate that as abutters to this contract zone, we are forced to keep responding to the 2nd floor apartment issue. I, like the other abutters, have lived here long before the most recent applicant, who had to have known the constraints the property had and purchased it for a price that must have taken that factor into consideration. I thank you for your time and opportunity to provide this input. Sincerely, Jean Levine. So these are similar to the first comment we've heard. Again, talking about past issues. I believe we heard from our Economic Development Office that recent changes have taken place to try to maintain the assurance that things won't get out of hand. So we do have the regulatory mechanism, the teeth to go after folks. So is it in it, this email, and it covers a lot of ground, but is there anything new that we think we've heard from the previous comments in the public hearing? All right, then, last call for public comment. Right. Could you just repeat your name for the record, please? Thank you.
I was not aware, and I don't know when this change happened with 5 and an HDR. But there's no possible way in the HDR where we are at that any property that I'm aware of in that area can handle 5 automobiles per apartment.
No.
There's no way, and I don't know how this town passed that.
So
That's just my.
no. So that area is actually medium density residential. However, when you do a contract zone, it's specific to one
Right.
lot.
But it's HDR now.
So that one lot
Right.
is
I
HDR
understand
because
that.
it's 3 stories
Right.
and it
But can
fits
that-
more.
all right,
So-
can that parking lot handle 5 people in each apartment?
So according to our minimum parking requirements, and the minimum parking requirement for a residential use is a smaller impact than a commercial use. So even if it didn't meet it, it's a less non-conforming use than what currently
Right.
exists. The parking there isn't an issue now because that second floor space isn't, it's not vacant, or it is vacant. If there was a commercial office in there with loads of employees, that might be allowed, and that parking lot could be overflowing. Having the residential unit, it's only 3, or even though you're allowed 5 unrelated people, it's only 3 required parking spaces for the unit. So the fact that it's less of a non-conforming use means that it would be allowed because you're not creating more of an impact than what already exists on that lot. So that would really.
But I'm
be
just
the-
saying, as a personal opinion,
Yep.
that I can't see how the town passed, and I don't know if you were involved in that at all either.
I think
Passed
Well-
5
it's always been that way.
HDR,
I think it's always been that way.
now it's 3.
The 3 was always for just the MDR. It was targeted at those neighborhoods and those people buying those homes and then renting them to 5 students.
But even so,
So HDR,
even if it was
Well,
all that time, I'm just saying that there's no way that these lots in that area can handle that parking.
I do appreciate the opinion, but what this board has to,
I know.
what we can make a decision is the
No, I
rules
know.
as they are.
I'm just
But
listening,
no, understood, and we appreciate that.
Chair, if I could respond to that. I think that one of the things that everyone should understand is that a contract zone is a negotiated agreement from the property owner and to the town council as to for how a specific property could be used. So if the town council, and I'm going to go out on a bizarre end here, if the town council said, we're going to allow this to happen, but the house has to be purple, then that's what the agreement is. It is an agreement that is negotiated with the owner and with the council. If it is the planning board's recommendation to the council that the council really needs to really look at what the agreed upon parking is, that's a legitimate comment. And I will be certainly taking that back anyway. So that we can look at that and say that, adequate parking needs to be provided. If we start having problems with a spillover and cars parking out in the middle of the road because there's no parking there, then it becomes a violation of the agreement. And so I think that your concerns, anyone's concerns are valid, and the council can take those into consideration when they're agreeing upon to that contract. So I thank you for those who have come tonight for that input. And I would say to the planning board, any things that you think that would be appropriate to look at, this is what you're here for, is to give that guidance to the council. Is that in your experiences, then, the purple houses are the ones that, should be there. That's certainly your prerogative. So I would say kind of nothing is out of bounds when you're asking for, we're okay with this, or we're not okay with this, but we're okay with it with these conditions or not. So does that help you, Mr. Chairman?
Very good. Yeah, I do have, that was the one item that I thought of, was the parking and how this would affect that. 2 or 3 bedrooms, what was it again?
On the top floor?
On the second floor.
2 bedrooms.
So 2 bedrooms. So in my mind, I was thinking of a 2-bedroom new apartment. Yep, a new apartment, and you'd have, so I was thinking that could be, again, as you said, no more, or this would be less non-conforming than a potential business office. Probably at least have 2 people working there.
I think, I know what they're seeing too is the overflow, what seems like right now is an overflow of parking, people helping themselves to that parking lot. It's other tenants at other buildings that surround our building, which came to light more recently during some of these plow storms. I've had my plow guy call me and goes, some of these cars don't belong, because I have a list of the license plates of the tenants that are there. And I've tracked those down, and they belong to other tenants of other properties that are next to mine. Couple of them, because we have vacancy on the second floor, we've allowed for one person, for his tenant, to park there. So as far as being ample parking, I don't think you're gonna have an issue. I mean, I haven't drafted out exactly how many spots, they've never been painted out, but I think you have 12 or 14 spots pretty easy.
Okay. Thank you. All right, last call for public comment. We'll close the public hearing. I've heard the comments loud and clear. I do think that is a very reasonable suggestion that perhaps coming out of this planning board, that there is a concern about parking. So having the council, have some assurances, because we're not reviewing that, but there'd be some assurances that there's enough parking to handle what you've proposed. We've heard it. That seems reasonable to me, to make sure that there's some protection for the surrounding area. It seems like you've addressed a lot of the other concerns, but that was my opinion. What are others' thoughts? Because tonight we're not approving this project. We're passing a recommendation onto the council. Is that correct, Kyle?
Correct.
Yep.
So if I understand it correctly, what Kyle said, the existing layout, right or wrong, is adequate for a 2-bedroom or 2 kind of thing. So it seems like that automatically, that concern can automatically be addressed with that standard.
The only thing is a contract zone can put more limitations than, just a base zoning district.
But in this case, it doesn't seem like it's necessary.
Correct.
Because
I
it's gonna
mean,
be
to me,
less
the
impact.
current allowable use is potentially more impactful than what's being proposed. So what's been agreed to for the past 25 years had the opportunity to be, cause more of a negative impact than what's being proposed now from a traffic and parking point of view.
Question for Joe?
Well, I was going to say along those lines, I think the difference is that the perception is it's much less impactful because it's always been empty.
Correct.
So if it's always empty, there's no impact. And so to the neighbors, it'll appear as if there is an impact because there'll be a change. Not that changes the standard. We have to look at it as a general rule, but I'm going to guess that that's why there's this perception that this is going to be a negative. Because if someone was in there and had 10 employees on that floor, it'd be a lot worse than a 2-bedroom apartment. The only thing I heard was the roof access. I think we'd want, definitely, it sounds like that's going to happen, but I haven't heard anything in writing. I would think we definitely want something in writing that says, because the most egregious things I heard were people on that roof throwing things. which seemed,
Is that a function of third floor apartments already in place that? So what I heard is that we're reviewing changes to the contract zone, which would be the second floor.
but I think regardless, I
Yeah.
think we'd want to try to, if we could, put something in that just says no more roof access for anybody. It's locked up, you know. And it sounds like they're going down that path, but I think you'd want that in writing somehow to say that's going to happen.
It's already built, just needs to be installed.
Well, we can pass along recommendations,
Right.
so that's what we're doing. Other thoughts on the parking issue? Jeremy's point is valid too. If you just are going by, it's always been approved, and the idea is that it's less of a non-conforming use. Thoughts on that?
Well, I hear that there are quite a lot of parking spaces there,
Mhm.
that some of them are being occupied by people that are, there's an excess because some of them are being occupied by folks who shouldn't be parking there.
Right.
So it sounds to me like it's not really something to worry about.
Okay.
And
And so what do you think?
I-
Okay. Joe? All right. Okay, so Judd's concern, again, if we're making a recommendation, Judd's concern is to ensure that, and it sounded to me, listening to Dave, he's been working with the applicant and the applicant himself, that that's in the works, but we can ensure that. I don't have any problem with adding that. Again, do we need to delineate parking if it's been okay? Everybody else didn't really have an issue with it. So I'm okay based on this discussion. So I think we're ready for a recommendation. We don't really, I always forget the procedure, but we don't need a motion. We're just agreeing on a recommendation.
Yep. I think
You don't need
just
the motion and the second and all that. These kind of things I always forget.
it wouldn't hurt to do it.
There we go.
just to
Let's
put
do
it
it.
on the
Let's go.
record.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it seems to me like with the, we know the roof thing has been taken care of. But this is a contract zone, and it's gonna live with the,
Mhm.
until council changes it.
Yep.
And so it seems reasonable to me that part of that contract zone could be that there will be no access to the roof.
Mhm.
And then that lives with the building in perpetuity.
May I speak to that? The new code won't allow it anyway. The new safety code won't allow roof access anymore. That was something that occurred in the past. I guess your fire truck ladder may not even reach it the way it is right now, which was immediately why we responded to building it right now and getting it done. So
Okay,
it's
so
going to happen when I go to get a building permit to start the work. That
So the
fire
question
is going to happen.
is this moot as well?
I would say it's good based on that information.
So we can just recommend the proposed changes, and we know what's going to happen. You said it's going to happen, it's not allowed anymore. Are we okay with just as is, then just recommending that we approve the proposal? All right, I'm going to go ask for a
I
motion.
make a motion that we recommend that we approve the proposal as proposed.
Very good, thank you, Jeremy. I get a second. Further discussion? I guess all those in favor of that recommendation. Very good, thank you. Next up on our agenda, we do have other new business. I don't see any. Discussion, next item on the agenda. And it was just a random thought. The older I get, the earlier I seem to go to bed. And I do know other planning boards that meet slightly earlier. So my question is, and I've heard some meet at 6:30. So I'm wondering whether, I don't know why, ever since I've been on this board for 65 years, I don't know why it was 7 o'clock. But I just figured it occurred to me, and I wanted to get some input. It's not something we have to vote on tonight, but
I'm in favor of earlier. So,
6:30 would be fine with me.
6:30.
6:30 makes it hard to get dinner in before the.
okay. Because that's what I was wondering, but then if we ever have meetings where we have a lot of discussion, 8:30 to 9, and sorry, I'm getting older.
Well, if everybody wants to meet at 6:30,
Mhm.
I can certainly manage it.
I'm just curious. I don't know why it occurred to me recently. but- Judd, do you have an opinion? You're a youngster.
I do like early. I'm an early to bed. So, yeah, I would prefer 6:30 because then I can just come straight from work too. So,
There, I'm not alone. Nice.
yeah.
Okay, so.
To just check procedurally,
Yeah, I'm just curious, but if there's, I can't remember what local municipality, remember they said, oh yeah, we start at 6:30 and it made me think a while ago. and I thought of it again today.
I can look into it.
Can you let us know?
Yep.
We'll talk about it next meeting.
Can I ask another question?
You can.
So this meeting next month is during school vacation week. And I didn't know if there's going to be, like, I can't attend. I didn't know if there was a bunch of us that weren't going to be able to attend because it's that week, or if it's not an issue and it's my problem.
I noticed that as well.
I have no issue.
I may have an issue. I don't know the there's races. that
Right.
week, Nordic state championships are that week, and I don't know the schedule yet.
I think there was someone else too that indicated that they wouldn't be able to attend. So either way, I just thought I'd bring it to light now instead of, the week before
Right.
the scheduled meeting.
I mean, we could move it. I think the RSU applicants, I think they were okay meeting with it during break, but I think it would be okay to move as well. If we were to move, I would recommend later rather than.
That's what I wondered too, but I'd love to have a quorum, seeing it's a fairly big issue. We haven't had too many in a while, but
It would be good to have the board here.
I agree. No, that was my thought too. So is there any opposition to perhaps bumping that a week?
I'll just have to check to make sure there's nothing else going on the following Wednesday that would conflict with us using the space, but I can look at that and reach back out to everyone.
Yeah, what if,
No, it would have been the 19th.
correct.
So we would now be looking at potentially the 26th.
I think that's the Orono Economic Development Corporation, and then we may, Dave, is that going to be in this chamber? The OEDC?
Yes, I said, when are you, I'm sorry, I missed-
26th is the day we were looking at bumping our meeting a week later.
Yeah, the Orono Economic Development Corporation normally would have the meeting in here, but no one schedules that meeting, so what you're saying is you want to bump it a week. What I can do is check with them, see whether they can come, go do it the week before.
That would be
Take your Wednesday-
great.
Take the Wednesday that you have, so
Yeah.
I would say do what's in your best interest, and we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Notice that power that the planning board has?
It's the only power you have.
It is. That's not mine. All right, so everybody okay with that? Bumping it to the 26th?
So, yeah, it's still at
7,
Yep.
yep, for now.
for now.
Yep.
I'll just reach out to everyone the next couple of days finalizing the exact time.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. We can ask the others' opinion just when they're here as well. So last on our agenda, we have adjournment. Can I get a motion? Second. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor? Let's go home. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
I haven't gotten that.